Zombieland Double Tap was just released this weekend and was again directed by Ruben Fleischer, returning from the first. And I was so happy to learn that Ruben Fleischer was returning from the first, because he was obviously the one who knew the DNA of the first the best out of anyone. He knew exactly what made it work, and he pulled it off so well a second time. One of the biggest reasons that made the first one work was the chemistry between the four main characters: Tallahassee, Columbus, Wichita, and Little Rock. And this chemistry totally carries over into this sequel. And I instantly felt transported back into this world with these characters. It was like nothing had changed except for their age. And man, is it funny watching them interact. They have such quippy, funny dialogue that ultimately just fit their characters so well. And that's exactly what we wanted to see. And the overall tone also carried over from the first, with the fourth wall breaking with the pop-up words, the same kind of gags, and even just the nonchalant attitude that the characters have towards the zombies living in Zombieland. And plot-wise, this story picks up in an interesting place. The four main characters invade the White House in a zombie-slaying Metallica song montage. And just real quick, I love that they played another Metallica song at the intro of this film, because that was one of my favorite parts of the first one. So this was just the perfect way to open this film. It instantly brought the audience back into this world and set the tone as the same as the first one. And not just the tone, but the scope of the world too. Zombieland has created a world in which these characters can do whatever they want, like invade the White House and make it their home. So the first Zombieland came out 10 years ago in 2009, and the screenwriters of this film kept in mind that at the very latest, Zombieland had begun in 2009. So no characters in this film reference anything that's happened in our world since 2009, because our history is a lot different than theirs, obviously. So I really appreciated this small detail. So there are some new characters introduced in this film. First, we have Madison, played by Zoe Deutsch. She's basically a basic Valley Girl chick who has somehow survived Zombieland up until this point. Then there's Albuquerque and Flagstaff, played by Luke Wilson and Thomas Middleditch, respectively, who virtually play clones of Tallahassee and Columbus. Then there's Berkeley, played by Avon Jogia, who is a pacifist hippie. And finally, we have Nevada, played by Rosario Dawson, who is sort of like a motherly innkeeper who is in the know of what's going on in Zombieland. And all of these characters play off the main cast so well. This script is just comedy gold. I loved every interaction they had. And the contrast that most of them had with Tallahassee was just the best. They all fit so naturally into where they were written in this story. And I never felt as if they were taking away screen time from me seeing my favorite characters again. They only enhanced seeing those main characters again. The scene in which Tallahassee and Columbus interact with Albuquerque and Flagstaff is just so hilarious, and they didn't overextend it. They didn't keep going with that same gag for too long, because it could have got old. And this to me just showed another example of how the screenwriters knew exactly what they were doing. So these new characters just fit so organically into the world building of this movie. Different parts of Zombieland are discovered in this movie, and what they do find seems like a natural progression of what they would find in the years that passed from the first. The action scenes were shot well, and the acting out of everyone, and I mean everyone, was great. And while Woody Harrelson seemingly has more of a scene-stealing role to play, the other characters don't ever feel minimized by his comedic presence. Even those that aren't written as funny of characters like Columbus and Wichita never feel like they've been written down compared to Tallahassee. So this movie was just so hilarious. I was laughing the whole way through. There are many gags that carry over from the first that I just so appreciated being in there. It felt just like such a natural evolution from that film. And then there are gags with the new characters that are just gut-wrenchingly funny. It was such a nice blend of comedy. Then there are more socially relevant jokes throughout. In our world today, it seems like there is such a great divide in the ideals of millennials and Gen Z versus baby boomers and Gen X, in their worldviews and their political standpoints. And this movie pokes fun at each side. It mocks each stereotype and each political viewpoint, and has so much fun doing it. These are some of the best jokes in the movie, and it was so refreshing to see a movie make fun of political viewpoints without shoving it down the viewer's throat. So again, it was just such an awesome blend of comedy all throughout, and the screenwriters just did a masterful job doing this. So really, I had such a fun ride with this movie, but I did have a couple problems. There are a couple plot holes in the film. Certain things would happen that just seem a little too convenient, like the characters would just stumble upon whatever they were looking for or just happen to run into another character. Also, the first half of the film sets up these new evolved T-800 zombies as being this crazy new threat they're gonna have to deal with, but then they aren't really much of a threat. I mean, they kind of are, but not at all to the extent that the film had been setting them up to be. Another thing is that at the beginning of the film, it sets up a conflict for Little Rock to deal with, and this conflict ended up being what drove the story forward, and Little Rock even became like the MacGuffin of the movie. She then was not featured very much, and was reduced to more of a plot device. Then at the end of the film, she ended up being in the same place that she was at in the beginning of the film. She had no resolution, and she seemed completely fine. Her character arc was very dissatisfying to me. And one small thing, some of the CGI looked a little bit cheesy. And finally, the end credits scene just felt incongruous with the rest of the film. It felt very awkward and really forced in there. I'm glad that this wasn't part of the movie. It was just an end credits scene, because when I rewatch it, I'll definitely just not stick around to the end of the credits. Overall though, these problems just really kind of paled in comparison to how much fun I had throughout this whole movie. I love that first movie, and I've been looking forward to a sequel for that for years, so to finally see this is really just a dream come true, and they did such a great job with it. This is one of the best comedy sequels I've ever seen, if not the best comedy sequel I've ever seen. Unlike most, it did live up to the original, and I'm gonna give Zombieland Double Tap an 8.5 out of 10. Well guys, what did you think of Zombieland 2? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for my next review.